The night was warm and still, and the only movement in the room came from the orange tongues of the fire, licking at the logs as if they were trying to breathe for me. I sat there, elbows on my knees, listening to the small cracks and sighs that wood makes when it turns into light. Somewhere outside, a sprinkling of summer wind worried the leaves, but in here the house felt sealed, like a chapel after the last parishioner has gone home. I wasn't rehearsing lines. I wasn't thinking about tomorrow's call sheet or whether a scene needed another take. I was thinking about a question that had begun as a whisper and grown into something that wouldn't let me sleep. Only 3 nights earlier, I'd woken at 2 a.m. with my face wet and my heart pounding, as if someone had opened a door inside my chest and let all the weather pour through. In the dream, my grandfather had spoken to me. He wasn't alone, and when I tried to put words to what followed, what it meant, what it promised, it felt like trying to carry a cathedral in my hands. But that night by the fire, I wasn't ready to tell the story yet. First, I had to tell you why the question took hold of me like it did, why it pressed its palm against my sternum and refused to move. A month before, I'd visited my grandmother, 93 now, and smaller than the world remembers her, but with the same quicksilver mind that can turn fear into a joke and a memory into a bright ribbon. We sat near her kitchen window while the late afternoon slanted across the table. She reached for my hand, and as soon as her fingers found mine, her face changed. It was the look people get when they step into a room that smells like a person they loved. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Will I see him again?" she asked. "Will I know him, and will he know me?" The words moved through me like a hammer through glass. I said the things you say because they're the things we've been given. Heaven is reunion, heaven is love. But the truth is, hope and certainty aren't twins. They're cousins who barely speak. When I left her house, the question came with me, buckled into the passenger seat, staring out the window at nothing. On the drive home, every face on a billboard, every couple on a sidewalk, every child being tugged across a crosswalk by a tired parent turned into a mirror of the same ache. We love, and then we lose. What happens to what we made together? I thought of my grandfather teaching me how to throw a baseball in the imperfect gold of a late Saturday afternoon, the way a glove smells like dust and oil, the way a voice sounds when it's showing you how to be brave. I thought of the mentors who held my shoulders when I was still trying to find a way to be a man, the friends whose names are a geography of my heart. Would those bonds vanish like smoke the moment heaven opened, or would they become something else, something not yet language? So I did what you do when the ground under your feet asks for proof. I went hunting for it. I opened every verse that glimmered with the promise of seeing clearly, every commentary that tried to pry the lid off eternity and peek inside. There were phrases like polished stones, face to face, no more tears, the perishable clothed with the imperishable, and they were beautiful, but they were also doors locked from the other side. It began to dawn on me that the question wasn't meant to be solved like a riddle. It was meant to be carried like a cross, at least until someone stronger lifted it with me. That night, the house was quiet in the way only midnight can teach. The set was far away. The noise of work dialed down to a hum in the back of my mind. Playing Jesus for this many seasons has taught me that prayer isn't an exam to pass. It's a voice to trust, not theater, not performance. A conversation with a person who knows how to read your silence better than you can read your lines. So I decided to do what children do when they run out of clever. Ask straight. Ask like someone who belongs at the table. I slid off the chair and onto my knees on the rug, palms open as if I were waiting for rain. "Jesus," I began. No flourish, no preface. "I need to understand." I told him about my grandmother's eyes when she said his name, about the thinness of her skin, about the way 93 years can still tremble when love is on the line. I told him about my grandfather's hands on the oars of an old boat, the steady pull, the softness in his voice when he said he was proud. I told him about the ache that settles in behind the ribs when a name you love is followed by the word was. I told him about every parent who goes to bed with a room too quiet, every spouse who memorizes the shape of an empty side of the bed, every friend who reaches for a phone and remembers why they can't call. I asked the question that haunts the living. Do we really find them again? Not as ideas, not as purified abstractions, but as the very people who help teach us how to be ourselves. The more I spoke, the less I tried to be careful. I confessed a fear I hadn't wanted to name, that heaven might be so holy we'd forget each other, that in the blaze of worship, the faces we bled with and laughed with would fade to a general glow. I trembled as I said it out loud, because it felt like blasphemy to imagine that perfection could mean amnesia. And yet, if love is the architecture of our days, how could the kingdom that completes us dismantle the beams that hold us up? Tears came, uninvited and not at all polite. I let them be. I told him I could live with not knowing 1,000 things, but not this. I told him I trusted him with my breath and my bones, but I wanted to learn how to trust him with my love, with the specific, stubborn, ordinary glory of it, the baseballs and the boat oars and the soft voices and the nicknames that only make sense to two people in the whole world. I told him I was asking, not because I'm a man who pretends to be him for a living, but because I'm a grandson and a son and a friend, and because a woman I love is running out of time to be reassured by anything less than the truth. At some point, I stopped reaching for language and sat in the kind of stillness that can only happen when you have emptied the drawer of every last word. The fire settled into a patient glow, and the clock on the wall kept saying the same thing it has always said, now, now, now. For a moment I wondered if I had only been speaking into the acoustic of my own longing, but then a quiet expectation rose up beside me, the way a tide rises, no drama, but irresistible. It felt like sitting at the edge of a stage and realizing the curtain is about to move. Before I finish, you should know that even in the middle of this, I remembered you, whoever you are, wherever you happen to be hearing this, because the question isn't just mine, it's ours. The ache is communal. The need is universal. We keep building little altars out of photographs and stories because we are trying to keep vigil for the people who taught us that love is how a human answers being alive. And maybe you're listening in a crowded kitchen, or on a late walk, or while the city sulks outside your window. Maybe your clock reads some awful hour, and you're awake for the same reason I was. If so, pull a chair up to the fire that lives in your memory and sit. We can ask together. I ended with a single word, Amen, small as a seed but heavy as a planet, and lifted my head. The room hadn't changed, not in any way a camera could capture, but my heartbeat had found a slower metronome, and the air felt like it does before lightning stitches the sky, charged with the possibility of an answer. I stood, exhausted and oddly young, and made my way to bed. I lay there in the dark, palms still open on the sheets, the way a child sleeps when he's sure someone is standing guard outside his door. I thought of my grandmother's question one more time, and I gave it back to the one who knows what to do with it. I did not know it yet, but the reply was already crossing the threshold, the kind of reply that doesn't arrive as a sentence but as a world you didn't know you could enter, and when it came, it would shake me awake with joy I could not contain. The clock had already slipped past midnight, and the house seemed to breathe with silence. Shadows from the fire painted restless shapes on the walls, and every pop of the wood seemed to echo louder than it should, like the room itself was leaning in to listen. My knees pressed into the rug, my palms were open on my lap, and I felt like a child again, small, needy, desperate to be heard. I wasn't praying for a role or a line or even for strength in the ordinary sense. I was pleading for something deeper, something raw. I told him what my grandmother had asked me, the fear in her voice when she whispered if she would still know her husband, if he would know her, if the bond they had built over a lifetime could survive the veil of death. The words spilled out unmeasured. I told him about my grandfather's steady hands on a fishing rod, the way Saturday mornings smelled of lake water and coffee, the quiet pride in his voice when he called me by name. I told him how much it broke me to think that heaven might polish away the very things that made our love real. I confessed my terror, that maybe eternity meant a kind of holy forgetting, that our faces, our laughter, our stories would dissolve in some endless chorus. And as I said it aloud, I shook because it felt like treason to imagine perfection without the people who taught me what love even meant. The longer I prayed, the less guarded my words became. I spoke for every parent who has stood over a bed that would never be filled again, for every widow who turns and reaches across sheets that stay cold, for every friend who scrolls through a phone and remembers they can't dial anymore. My tears ran unchecked, darkening the rug, and still I spoke. Jesus, I trust you with my life. Teach me how to trust you with my love. Show me if these bonds we forge in our short years are more than dust. Show me if they endure. The air in the room thickened with the weight of my longing, as though heaven itself had bent low to catch every word. An hour must have passed, though time had lost its grip. By the time I whispered, "Amen," I was wrung out, emptied of every fear and hope I had been holding. Yet beneath the exhaustion was something else, a strange expectancy, the sense that I hadn't been pouring my words into emptiness, that someone had been sitting across from me the whole time, listening with eyes I couldn't yet see. I crawled into bed like a son who had finally asked his father the one question he never dared to speak, my chest still heaving but my heart open at last. I thought I was closing the night. What I didn't know was that heaven was already preparing its reply, and it would come not as an echo, but as a vision so alive it would tear me from my sleep in trembling wonder. The dream began like a familiar photograph, but one that had been developed in colors the human eye had never known. My living room was there, the same fireplace, the same chair, even the same rug beneath my feet. But everything carried a radiance that no candle or bulb could imitate. It was as if every object breathed light from the inside out. I was seated, and I knew before turning my head that someone was next to me. When I did, I saw him, Jesus, resting calmly at my side. The way he looked at me dissolved every shadow inside me. His eyes were alive with compassion, with an affection that asked nothing in return. No performance, no act, no pretense could ever capture what I felt in that gaze. "You've asked a beautiful question, Jonathan," he said softly, his voice like a stream flowing over stones. "Your grandmother asked it too, so did your grandfather. Anyone who has ever loved deeply has asked it eventually." He rose, extending his hand toward me. "Come, I want to show you something that will put your heart at rest." The moment I placed my hand in his, the room dissolved. We were walking in a garden suspended between heaven and earth, more alive than anything I had seen, yet more familiar than my own skin. The grass shimmered with color, the flowers seemed to hum with light, and the very air sang like joy made audible. It was not music from an instrument, but harmony born from creation itself. Every breath filled me with peace. Every glance filled me with awe. "This is where I bring those who need to understand heaven," he explained. His steps unhurried yet purposeful. His words went past my ears, past my thoughts, straight into the tenderest part of me. "You've imagined heaven as the erasure of humanity," he continued, smiling with a gentle laugh. "But holiness does not erase, it completes. Love is not the enemy of holiness, it is the foundation of it." He stopped and turned to face me fully. The golden air danced in his hair as he spoke. "When people arrive here, they do not lose who they are. They become who they were always meant to be. Your grandfather is not diminished, he is magnified. Every quality you cherished in him is not erased, but perfected." Tears began to sting my eyes as he went on. "The man who held your fishing rod steady, who told you stories, who was proud of you, he waits for you, not just his spirit, not an echo, but him, his voice, his laughter, his way of loving you. Death uncovers the eternal core of a person's identity, it never steals it." Then he lifted his hand, and the horizon shifted. I saw in the distance a gathering, vast and radiant, a reunion that pulsed with laughter and embraces. Families running toward each other, friends collapsing into each other's arms, couples meeting eyes with a joy so fierce it felt like the sun had bent low to kiss the earth. It was not a dream of reunion. It was reunion itself, eternal and overflowing. "Watch carefully," Jesus whispered. "This is what your grandmother longs to see." I fixed my eyes on one pair among the multitude, an older woman and a man she knew before her hair had turned silver. The instant their gazes locked, every line of age melted into recognition, not just of the face, but of the soul. When they embraced, it was as though every laugh they'd shared, every private joke, every quiet night together was distilled into that moment. Their joy struck through me like light through glass. It wasn't simply happiness. It was the relief of finally being fully seen and fully loved by the one who had walked beside them in life. "Do you see?" Jesus asked me, his voice trembling with delight. "They don't just remember. They understand perfectly now. Every wound is healed, every misunderstanding gone, every ounce of love magnified beyond measure. What they had on earth was a shadow. What they hold now is substance. I watched them speak as if they had never left each other's side, laughter bubbling, sentences finishing, stories retold with a depth that words could barely contain. And yet this was more than recognition. It was union without fear, intimacy without walls, love without the frailties of flesh. Still, my heart ached with another question. But Jesus, I whispered, what of those whose love was wounded? What of marriages that bent under sorrow, of families torn by bitterness? His eyes grew impossibly tender, like oceans folding into themselves. He pointed to another scene, unfolding just beyond. There I saw those who had carried deep hurts meeting again, their arms around each other, their tears no longer bitter, but cleansing. A father and son who had once been estranged now wept together, finally able to see the truth of each other's hearts. In that embrace, every wall came down, every fracture filled with light. In heaven, he said, they see as I see, with perfect compassion, perfect understanding, perfect love. The very scars that divided them become the proof of my grace. Where Satan sowed division, I reveal redemption. Marriages marked by selfishness become radiant partnerships here, not because their identities are erased, but because I complete them. What they grasped at in their weakness, they now hold in fullness. As his words soaked into me, the scenes around us pulsed with restoration, with love refined into brilliance. Every face glowed, every embrace healed something deep within me, and still Jesus' eyes carried more. Jonathan, he said, voice swelling with anticipation, what I will show you next is the most beautiful part. This is what your grandmother must know. This is what will forever reshape how you see those you've loved. I turned with him toward a hillside bathed in golden light. A figure walked slowly toward us, and my breath caught in my throat. My chest clenched as if my soul recognized him before my eyes did. Step by step, closer and closer, the man became clear. It was my grandfather, yet not frail, not weary, not marked by age. He came toward me radiant, vibrant, carrying the fullness of his life in his stride and the brilliance of eternity in his eyes. He was walking toward me across the hillside, not the frail man I had last seen in a hospital bed, but my grandfather in the full bloom of his strength. His shoulders broad, his step firm, his face alight with health and joy that seemed to spill outward like the sunrise. Every detail of him was achingly familiar, yet glorified, his smile the same one that made me feel, even as a boy, like I was the most important person in the room. My throat tightened, my heart pounded. I whispered, "Grandpa," barely able to believe what my eyes told me. He reached me and laid his hand on my shoulder, the warmth of it flooding me with peace and certainty. His voice was rich, almost musical, the same tone that had once called my name across a lake or carried through the house with laughter. "Jonathan, my boy," he said, eyes glistening with love, "I've been waiting to tell you something." The tears broke free and streamed down my cheeks. He went on, "Do you remember how I used to tell you that loving you was one of the greatest joys of my life?" I nodded, unable to form words. That joy has not diminished for even a moment. It has only grown stronger every single day since I came here. You see, death doesn't divide us the way you think. It doesn't cancel the bond of love. It deepens it. I don't miss you the way you miss me because here there is no distance. I am loving you right now, praying for you right now, cheering for you in this very moment. I looked to Jesus, trembling with awe and confusion. How is that possible? His smile was gentle, his eyes shining like fire wrapped in compassion. Time is different in eternity. Your grandfather lives in the eternal now. He sees your whole journey at once. Your childhood days by the water, your struggles as a young man, your work today, and the joy of the day you will meet again. To him, nothing is lost. All of it is present. My grandfather nodded eagerly. I was with you when you gave your life to Christ in that hospital room. I was there on the set the very first day you portrayed him. I am there each time you question whether you are worthy. And I will be there when you finally realize worthiness was never the point. Love was always the point. His words struck me like thunder, reshaping my very soul. He turned his gaze upward, his eyes shimmering as though they carried a message across the veil. And Jonathan, tell your grandmother this. She will not find a stranger when she arrives. She will find me. The same man who danced with her in the kitchen, who held her hand through every storm, who whispered jokes in the quiet and listened when she hummed her favorite songs. I will remember it all, every anniversary, every laugh, every prayer whispered together in the night. And I will love her the way I always wanted to, the way I sometimes failed to on earth. Jesus stepped closer then, his presence like the heart of the garden itself. This is the truth of heaven, he said softly. Love doesn't begin again here. It is perfected. Every real bond forged in time becomes eternal. Nothing given in love is wasted. It is carried forward into forever. He paused, his words like light etched into the air. Jonathan, people fear that heaven will erase their humanity, but heaven fulfills it. Every good thing about love is magnified. Every relationship built on sacrifice and tenderness continues, only freed from fear, jealousy, and brokenness. As I listened, the scenes around us unfolded, families reuniting, friends laughing, even those who had hurt each other embracing with tears of healing. My grandfather's hand never left my shoulder. His smile was radiant as he added, "Your grandmother worries that I won't know her, that age will have changed her beyond recognition. But I will see her spirit instantly, the girl I courted, the mother of our children, the woman who stood beside me. Spirits do not age, and hers I have loved all along." His words pierced me with a sweetness almost too much to bear. I thought of her fragile hands clasped in mine just weeks before, her voice trembling as she asked the question. Now I carried the answer, an answer blazing with glory, heavy with eternity, and as my grandfather spoke those final words, Jesus looked at me with such love that I felt my chest could not contain it. The air itself seemed to thrum with suspense, as if the whole garden was leaning in for what was about to be revealed next. The moment my grandfather's arms wrapped around me, I felt something no words can carry. His embrace wasn't just his own, it was as though every person I had ever loved and lost was present in that single touch. The love of my other grandparents, of family gone before me, of friends and mentors who had shaped my life, all of it surged through him into me. It shattered the weight of grief I had carried, melted every fear I had nursed about loss. Tears came like a flood, but they were not the tears of despair. They were tears of joy, of relief, of awe at a love so complete that death itself bowed to it. I turned to Jesus, choking out the question that burned in me. How can I explain this? How do I help others believe that death is not the end of love, but the doorway to its perfection? He looked at me with the kind of gaze that strips away every lie you've ever told yourself. His voice rang like the calm after a storm. "Jonathan, you simply tell them what you've been shown. Tell them that everyone they've ever truly loved is not lost. They are more alive now than they ever were on earth. They are not distant shadows. They are part of an eternal celebration of love, and the bonds they forged still burn brighter than ever." He touched my shoulder, his hand steady, his eyes alight with certainty. "Even the ache of missing them. Do you feel it? That ache is love itself, still alive, still binding. Missing someone is not proof of absence. It is proof of a bond that death cannot sever. That pain is love continuing, whispering that it was never defeated. Love always wins." My grandfather drew me close again, his voice breaking with tenderness. "Tell your grandmother this. The man she loved is more himself now than ever before, more in love with her than ever, more eager than ever to see her again. When she comes, she won't find a stranger, and not even a distant memory. She will find me, the same man who danced with her in the kitchen, who held her through storms, who promised forever. And when forever came, I kept my promise. I am keeping it even now. When she steps into eternity, we will dance to our song once more, and this time, we will never have to stop." The golden garden began to fade, yet the words seared themselves into my soul. Jesus spoke again as the light blazed brighter, swallowing the scene. "This is not only for you or your family, Jonathan. This is for everyone who wonders. Every parent aching for a child, every spouse longing for their beloved, every friend holding on to memories like fragile glass. Tell them the truth. Their loved ones are not gone. They are waiting, whole and radiant, preparing a welcome filled with joy beyond imagining. Every act of love on earth is a seed of eternity. Every bond formed in sacrifice, kindness, and devotion is an eternal treasure stored in heaven. Love is the only thing in creation that can never die, because I am love, and I am eternal. Then came my grandfather's last whisper before the vision dissolved into holy brightness. Jonathan, don't let anyone tell you heaven is cold or impersonal. Heaven is the most personal place there is. It is where every soul is fully known and perfectly loved. It is where love becomes what it was always meant to be. Tell your grandmother. Tell the world. And never forget, our story is not over. It is only beginning. When my eyes opened, my pillow was soaked, my chest trembling, but my heart carried a peace I had never known. I lay there in the darkness, letting the truth settle into me. Death had not stolen my grandfather. It had magnified him. Love had not ended. It had been completed. I thought of my grandmother, of the lines on her face when she asked me if she would see him again, and I knew I carried the answer she had been longing for. At dawn, I stood by my window, gazing at the stars paling into morning, whispering gratitude into the still air. Thank you, Jesus, for showing me what waits beyond. Thank you for proving that love is stronger than death. Thank you that those who loved me still love me now more deeply than ever. And in that moment, all my fear of loss, all my dread of death, melted into anticipation. The next day, I told my grandmother everything. I watched her eyes widen, watched relief wash over her face like a tide, and for the first time in years, she smiled with the light of a bride awaiting her groom. And I knew then this message was not only for her, not only for me, but for you, for every soul who aches tonight. So hear me. The ones you love are not gone. They are alive, perfected, waiting. Their love for you has only grown, and one day, in a place where time no longer breaks us apart, you will hold them again, and when you do, it will be more real, more radiant, more eternal than anything you have ever known. This is the promise, this is the truth. Love does not end, it only begins again forever.